I brought gifts to Christmas, but my brother smiled. This year's just for real family. I nodded, left quietly. Then heard him laugh. He thinks paying the mortgage gets him a seat. That night, I transferred the deed. By morning, his key didn't work, and my phone had 37 missed calls. I, 34 am, walked up to my childhood home that December evening, arms full of carefully wrapped presents, the same way I'd done every Christmas for the past 8 years. The house looked perfect, twinkling lights outlining the roofline, fresh wreaths on every window, and that massive tree visible through the front window that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Everything I'd been quietly paying for. The door opened before I could knock. My brother stood there with that familiar smirk, the one that had irritated me since we were kids, but had taken on a different edge these past few years. Behind him, I could see the living room packed with relatives, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the warm air. He looked at the gifts in my arms, then back at my face, and his smile widened in a way that made my stomach tighten. "This year's just for real family," he said, his voice carrying just enough volume for a few cousins nearby to hear. I felt the cold December air hit my back as I stood there, processing his words. Real family. After everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd paid for to keep this house, our family home, from being foreclosed on when our parents died 3 years ago. I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice, and turned around. The gifts felt heavier as I walked back to my car, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Behind me, I heard the door close with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than a slam. I was halfway to my car when I heard it. Through the thin walls of the house I'd been maintaining, renovating, and essentially funding, came the sound of my brother's voice, clearer now, probably because he thought I was gone. "He thinks paying the mortgage gets him a seat at the table," followed by a burst of laughter from what sounded like half the room. The words hit me like ice water. More laughter, then someone else's voice asking if I'd actually believed I belonged there just because I wrote the checks. I stood there in the driveway, keys in my hand, listening to my own family mock the very thing that had kept them all from losing the house, where they were currently celebrating without me. The house where I'd spent every weekend for 2 years fixing the roof, replacing the heating system, updating the electrical work that was a fire hazard waiting to happen. The drive home was a blur. My apartment felt smaller than usual, quieter, colder despite the heating I could actually afford to run. I sat on my couch, still in my coat, staring at the pile of gifts I'd dropped by the door. Presents I'd spent weeks choosing, worrying about whether everyone would like them, whether they'd appreciate the thought I'd put into each one. I pulled out my phone and stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my banking app and looked at the account I'd been using for the house payments. 8 years of mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, repairs, upgrades, all of it documented, all of it tracked, all of it flowing from my account to keep that house standing. The legal documents were in my filing cabinet, exactly where I'd put them 3 years ago. The deed transfer papers my lawyer had prepared when I'd taken over the mortgage, making me the legal owner while letting my brother and his family continue living there. I'd never told them about the ownership change, just said I was helping with payments. My brother had been so grateful back then, crying about how he couldn't afford the mortgage on his retail manager salary, how they'd lose the family home, how the kids would be devastated. I'd stepped in without hesitation, taking on debt I could barely afford at the time, refinancing my own condo to make it work. But gratitude, I was learning, has an expiration date. I spent that night making phone calls, first to my lawyer, then to a property management company I'd researched months ago during one of my brother's previous dismissive comments about my contributions. By morning, everything was in motion. The locksmith arrived at 6 a.m. I timed it perfectly, early enough that the neighbors wouldn't be awake to witness the drama, but late enough that my brother would be getting ready for his opening shift at the store. I stood across the street in my car, watching as the professional quietly changed every lock on the house. My phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. The first call from my brother went to voicemail. Then another. By 7:15, when he would have discovered his key no longer worked, the calls started coming in rapid succession. I let them all go to voicemail. By 8 a.m., my phone showed 23 missed calls. By noon, 37. The voicemails ranged from confused to angry to desperate to threatening. My sister-in-law called. My nephew, home from college for winter break. Aunts, uncles, Cousins who'd apparently been at yesterday's family-only gathering. I listened to exactly one voicemail. My brother's voice, cracking with rage and disbelief, demanding to know what I thought I was doing, saying I couldn't just throw them out of their family home, that this was illegal, that he was calling the police. I almost laughed at that. I hoped he did call the police. I hoped they'd explain to him exactly how property ownership worked. Update 1. The property management company called me around 2 p.m. to confirm they'd posted the required legal notices. 3 months to vacate, as per state law. More than generous, considering I could have pursued immediate eviction for non-payment of rent, which was legally what their occupancy had become. My brother showed up at my office at 4:30. Building security called up to ask if I wanted to see him. I told them no. He waited in the lobby until security asked him to leave. He came back an hour later. Security called the police that time. The voicemails kept coming. Accusations that I was ruining Christmas, that I was tearing the family apart, that our parents would be ashamed of me. That last one almost got to me, until I remembered sitting in the lawyer's office 3 years ago, signing papers to prevent the foreclosure, while my brother sat next to me crying about how he just needed help getting back on his feet. 3 years. I'd given him 3 years to get back on his feet, and instead he'd gotten comfortable treating me like a bank account that occasionally showed up to family gatherings. Christmas came and went. My phone stayed off. I spent it at a resort in the mountains, skiing for the first time in years, eating room service, and sleeping in without setting an alarm. It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had since our parents died. Update 2. I turned my phone back on December 28th, 83 missed calls. My voicemail box was full. Text messages that started apologetic and quickly turned vicious when I didn't respond. The most interesting message was from my aunt, the one who'd laughed the loudest when my brother made his joke about mortgage payments. She wanted to know if we could work something out, because my nephew was supposed to start his spring semester and needed a stable address for financial aid paperwork. I almost felt bad about that one. Almost. I called my lawyer to check on the eviction timeline. Everything was proceeding legally and smoothly. My brother had apparently tried to contact a few attorneys about fighting it, but property law was clear. I owned the house. I had the right to terminate their occupancy with proper notice. The property management company reported that someone had tried to break in through the back door, but had been scared off by the new security system I'd had installed. The cameras caught my brother's face clearly. I chose not to press charges. Family, after all. New Year's Eve, I got a text from my sister-in-law. Not angry this time. Scared. They'd found a rental, but needed first month, last month, and security deposit. Could I help them with moving costs? Just until they got settled? I stared at that message for a long time. 3 years of mortgage payments. 8 years of being treated like a wallet with legs. One Christmas evening of being told I wasn't real family. I deleted the message without responding. Update 3. February 15th. Moving day arrived exactly as scheduled. I drove by the house that morning and saw the moving truck in the driveway. Boxes stacked on the front lawn. My brother directing the movers with sharp, angry gestures. He saw my car and started walking toward me. I drove away. The property management company called that afternoon to confirm the house was empty and undamaged. My brother had left the keys on the kitchen counter with a note that I apparently didn't want to hear about. I put the house on the market 2 weeks later. The real estate market was strong, and it sold in 6 days for $40,000 over asking price. After paying off the remaining mortgage and factoring in all the money I'd put into repairs and payments over the years, I broke even. That felt about right. I used the money as a down payment on a small cabin upstate. Nothing fancy, but it's mine completely, and the only family gatherings that happen there are the ones I choose to host. My phone doesn't ring much anymore. A few cousins still call occasionally, usually around birthdays or holidays. They're careful not to mention my brother or ask about the house. We make polite conversation about work and weather and say we should get together soon, knowing we probably won't. I heard through the family grapevine that my brother and his family are doing fine in their rental. He got promoted to assistant manager. They've stopped talking about buying a house, which is probably smart given their track record with property management. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. If maybe I should have just talked to him, explained how his words made me feel, given him a chance to apologize and change. Then I remember standing in that driveway, listening to my own brother mock my generosity to a room full of people I'd helped support for years. I remember the sound of their laughter when he joked about my mortgage payments. like I was some pathetic hanger-on instead of the person keeping that roof over their heads. Real family doesn't treat each other like ATMs. Real family doesn't gatekeep holiday celebrations based on biology while ignoring sacrifice. Real family doesn't bite the hand that feeds them and then act surprised when the food stops coming. I spent 8 years trying to be the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who stepped up when things got tough. I thought that's what family meant, being there for each other, taking care of each other, making sacrifices for the people you love. But family has to go both ways. Respect has to go both ways. And when someone shows you who they really are, when they make it clear that your contributions are expected but your presence is optional, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone involved is to believe them. I'm spending this Christmas at my cabin. I bought myself the expensive coffee maker I'd been wanting for 2 years but couldn't afford because I was busy paying someone else's mortgage. I'm making a prime rib dinner for one and planning to spend the day reading by the fireplace. No gifts to wrap for people who don't want me there. No driving across town to be tolerated instead of welcomed. No wondering if this will be the year they finally see me as family instead of a financial safety net. Just peace, quiet, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply stopping to care. My phone will probably ring on Christmas Day. It might be my brother or my sister-in-law or one of the relatives who thought his joke was so funny last year. Maybe they'll want to apologize or explain or ask for forgiveness. Maybe I'll answer. Maybe I won't. But this year, for the first time in a long time, that choice will be entirely mine.